Innovation is only getting faster, ladies and gentlemen. And if you want to have the fastest, best, most exciting user experience on your portal's listings, then you probably need to get in touch with our sponsor, PropTex. That's PropTex with two X's. They are at the forefront of engaging, sticky user experiences on real estate portal listings, and they're only going to get faster. If you don't want to get left behind, get in touch with Stefan, get in touch with Josh at proptex with 2x's.com. Tell them we sent you, see what they can do for you. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the start of the podcast for you. Simon Baker showing you a listing to a real estate. There it is. On Google, and that is what today's emergency podcast is for. So hello and welcome to the PPW Pod, bringing you news, views and interviews from the world of real estate, online marketplaces and prop tech industries. We'll skip all the boring stuff. Hello, Mike DelPrete.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, thank you. I mean, you've had a busy time over the last few days reporting on finding some real estate listings popping up on Google. Let's get straight into it, Mike. What was your first reaction when you started seeing listings?
Holy shit, you know. and yeah, I mean, listen, there's so much, you know, and we'll get into this. There's so much of like looking at the past and looking at the future, and I've been there, and there's a lot of speculation. But when you have a business like Google or Amazon starting to look at your business and experimenting with it, that's a big deal, right? It's a big deal. And the integration itself, I mean, just to be clear, again, we'll get into it. You know, you under certain circumstances, you type in, like Simon showed us, homes for sale in Chicago, homes for sale in Denver. The first thing you see are listings, actual listings from the MLS with information, and you can scroll through it. There's filters, like that looks like a real estate portal, right? And if you click in on one, Simon, you know, if you click in on one, the call to action, move it up just a little bit, is really clear, right? There's that little button, request a tour. So this isn't just, oh, I'm going to buy an ad on my property for sale. This is a full featured, front to back, up to down, you know, property portal listing experience that ends with somebody connecting to an agent. So yeah.
Yep. And there it goes. This went through to a guy called Matt Lacey, and I can book a meeting on his calendar.
I bet Matt's had a lot of calls over the past 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. Now I've got a question. Is this now we were talking just before we started the show, and I'm in the US, so I'm assuming being in the US is a great advantage from an IP address. And I couldn't bring it up, and then you said, you know, Chrome and incognito mode. I did it in Safari, but in private tabs or whatever, and it comes up. So clearly this is sort of experimenting at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. It's, you know, it's mobile only. I know that's kind of for sure. And sometimes you have to be in incognito mode or a private tab. Sometimes you don't. I'm not sure of the IP address restrictions, but you're right. And it's also a test. So sometime it's just going to work and sometime it's not, right? You can imagine Google kind of throttling this on and off for, you know, whatever reasons they want. And then lastly, it's only live in certain markets. So the ones, you know, like Denver, Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, you know, those are the ones I've tried. I think if you try Boise, you're not going to get anything. I don't know about Miami. So it's certainly a test. It's just a test.
The other thing is interesting. I'm just playing around with a few at the moment, and they all seem to be this Mr. Matt Laracy group. It seems to be one group's listings in it.
Yeah, so I guess we can add some context there, I think. So what we do know is that, as you showed us in a screenshot over the weekend, Mike, these listings are going to a portal called Come Home. And Come Home is powered by a property intelligence company called House Canary. Now, House Canary also operates a brokerage. It has property intelligence for over 136 million properties in its data set across the US. So there's a lot of properties that it has access to data to. Now, interestingly, it also has a product called Canary AI, which is what looks to me, after a bit of basic research, an agentic AI assistant to interrogate House Canary's 136 million strong property database. So we've got something to do with a portal, but also some kind of agentic AI play potentially going on here. And Google is looking at testing House Canary's AI capabilities. There's all kinds of interesting things to go along here. I guess you mentioned it there, Mike, just briefly. You said whatever Google is looking to test. So what do you think Google might be testing with this little experiment right now?
Let's get to that question. I want to cover off a couple background things really quick.
Yeah,
kind
sure.
of Simon's point about the agents and then where the listings are coming from. So let's start with the listings. So the listings are not coming from agents or brokers. They're not coming from home sellers. Nobody's uploading listings. Again, we're in the US market. So this is super important because people are thinking, oh, in Australia and the UK and Spain, this is the US market. In the US market, we have the MLS systems. There's about 550 MLSs spread out throughout the country. The listings are all coming from the MLSs. So there's so much to unpack, but the House Canary is the company and they have a real estate portal called Come Home. Come Home is getting all of their listings from the MLSs the same way that every other real estate portal in the US is. Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, right? Those are agreements with the MLSs to get those listings. So that's where that's coming from. Secondly, and I'm happy to answer questions, after on this, but secondly, Simon, to your point about the agent. So there are agents spread out throughout the entire process. Like if you're scrolling through listings, you'll see a face pop up. And if you click on a listing, you want to schedule a tour, ask a question, another agent pops up. So those are actually coming from this little known Google program called LSA, which is local service ads. So if you're a dentist or a barber or whatever, and you have a lot of Google reviews that are 5 stars, you might have a local service ads account, LSA. There's also real estate agents that are doing that. So, I bet if you type in top real estate agent Miami, you'll get some LSA results. So that's a program anybody can join. I bet their phone's been ringing off the hook, but those are agents that, and effectively it's a bidding system. It's like pay per lead. So and those will be buyer's agents that'll help you through the process. So it's the same. It's a long way of saying it's the exact same business model as Zillow and Realtor.com in the US, not Homes.com, right? It's not you're listing your lead. It's buyer agents. So I don't want to bore everybody, and I'll just stop right there. So there's the two background. And having given that, Harvey, I've totally forgotten your question. Remind me, what did you ask?
What do you think Google might be experimenting with here, and what are we testing right now? Are we just dipping a toe into having some live agentic AI stuff going on? Are they testing out what the level of click-throughs?
I mean, yeah, I think
duration. There's so many metrics and things you could be looking at. I'm just wondering if there's a big picture in all this.
I'm sure there's some project managers at Google that kind of have a spreadsheet, and along one axis they're talking about their search traffic, how much search they get for certain things, and another axis is kind of how much money they could make. And real estate probably popped up, and yeah, they've done it before, and every couple of years, I'm sure somebody over there starts thinking about it. I think that's it, right? How much can they make some money selling ads? Like, this isn't rocket science. This is very much in Google's wheelhouse, right? You do a search like flights to Jakarta or, dentists Boulder, you get an ad, Google makes some money. So they're probably testing that out. I think you alluded to it a little bit. I mean, the interesting bigger play to keep an eye on here is AI. And it's not so much House Canary's AI. Like, I don't really care about that, but it's Gemini. I think everybody's been kind of waiting for listings to pop into the LLMs, and Zillow has a partnership with OpenAI. So maybe this is Google's response to that, right? And it's starting with search results, but if it starts here, there's no reason it ends here. And if it starts here, there's no reason you couldn't see these same things in Gemini. You could try tomorrow. So I think that's it. I'm not as smart as Google, but that's my guess as to what they're testing around.
The question, it's interesting here. We know that Zillow is embedding its listings into Zillow is investing its listings in ChatGPT.
Correct.
but it's sort of annoying the MLSs because they're going to go, wait a second, is this a legitimate use of the agreements we have?
Yep.
Isn't this the same thing?
This is the same thing. This is the same thing. And I will say, like, this industry is so good at saying yes, but, and there's a lot of yes, but, like, yes, but this wouldn't work in Australia. Yes, but they've tried this before and it doesn't work. Yes, but, I mean, it just keeps going, right? And one of the yes, buts is, yes, but this is in violation of MLS policies and they're going to shut it down. I got news for you. There's no, like, super villain headquarters where all the MLSs hang out and they kind of decide these things together and they have big switches and they just kind of turn things off. And in fact, that would be an antitrust violation in the US. They can't kind of collectively do that. The MLSs haven't shut down Zillow's integration with OpenAI. I think if you're saying, oh, they're going to shut this down, that might be shaky ground to be standing on.
Yeah, I think there would be quite a few challenges there. Now, we've seen players come. I mean, you talk about Google's done this before. It's done in the travel industry. I haven't seen Expedia or Kayak disappear off the face of the earth as a result of this. Clearly, it does take a bit of traffic, but it doesn't fundamentally change the game. And we've also seen large players before get into the real estate game. Facebook was a good example of this marketplaces business. I remember we ran a conference in Miami, maybe, I've forgotten now, years ago. And we had literally 15 or 20 Facebook people there, basically trying to learn what is real estate. I think what they were really trying to work out. Oh, we've got this thing called marketplace. We've got these things called homes. What do we do, right? And that disappeared, right? That just sort of... oh my God, too hard and go away. Do you think this will go the same way because of all the issues that, and even if we go back further in time to when they shoved, in Australia they shoved listings on a map back in 2008 or 9. I think I was still at REA. I can't remember. No, I think I may have just left. And everyone thought the world had ended at that point. And it's the same issue, right? You've got to go and deal face to face with a lot of real estate agents and you need to build an infrastructure around servicing that market. Is this going to go the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded of that investing phrase, past performance is not an indicator of future results. So they're great data points. But I mean, I don't know. It's all speculation. I think we're at an interesting time. Well, to your point, you mentioned Facebook Marketplace and real estate kind of went away. My daughter is looking for a place to rent and she used Facebook Marketplace. Like, that's it. So I think it's not competing with the big real estate portals, but it has found certain niches where it is adding value to certain consumers. I think we're at a really interesting time with AI and effectively AI saying, yeah, we know like there's copyright laws and all that, but it kind of doesn't apply anymore. And we're just going to gobble up as much information as we can. And you can sue us if you want, and maybe we'll cut some deals. But, we're doing first and asking permission second. And that's a new world, right? That's different now than it's been before in the past. So if we're piggybacking off that trend, it seems like, I would bet my money on this continuing and not going away. Is it going to totally replace all the portals? No, I don't think so. I think it's, honestly, right now, after a couple days thinking about it, it's bad news for the number 3, 4, 5 portals, right? The folks that kind of appear lower on the page anyway. They're just getting pushed further to irrelevancy. And I'm talking about the US. Zillow's got a strong brand name. They have strong organic search. That's fine. But I think if you're looking at it that narrow, you are missing a bigger picture, right? There's a certain amount of, like, it's a non-zero sum game. There's a certain amount of transactions in the US every year. Let's call it 4 million. So yeah, Google might get some traffic. Zillow will get some traffic. But if somebody types in homes for sale in Chicago, and I got news for you, like some people do that, right? And they find an agent that way, that might be one transaction that goes to Google and one less for everybody else. So it is a big impact. And I think the last thing I'll say is just looking at the geographies. There's two sides of the coin. So I agree with you entirely, Simon. The reason this doesn't work for Google in every other market, and you know this from REA, right? You need a sales team. You need people like convincing folks to give you their listing, to pay you to put their listing up. That's not Google's business. But in the US, it's different because all these listings are kind of, quote unquote, freely available if you have agreements with the MLSs, and they would dispute free. That's different. The other side of the coin is, if Google starts sniffing around and they're making some money, I mean, they're not just going to stop at the US. Then eventually they'll figure out a way in the future. And can we imagine, a future where there's, and this is the trend right now, there's not one be all end all location for all listings. They're in these different pockets, and they're using AI to kind of find them and pull them up together. I wouldn't immediately discount it.
Yeah, I think it doesn't create much upside for all the existing players in the market.
No, and there's a lot of pressure right now anyway, right? The European portals have been hammered lately around AI and just how much can we keep raising prices? This is just one more headwind on top of that.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be you have to think long term. What I mean, I was thinking about your point about brand and the power of the Zillow brand, and then I was thinking rentals, Craigslist, the most antiquated site on the internet. Okay, if you want to just go see what text links look like, because all it is text links, and it's still pumping along 100 plus million. I was just checking the similar web traffic, 100 plus million visits a month to what is fundamentally the world's worst interface, but it still works. And I bet you it's still being used a lot for rentals and the same categories it was being strongly used for historically. So I guess the question out of all this is, where does that magic line get drawn between the power of the brand for the vertical versus the power of the brand of Google? And clearly, number one has more than a fighting chance, and as you mentioned, number three could be a little bit, worried this whole process. How do you think the power of the brand should evolve over time?
It's a big question. What pops into my mind as you're saying that is Google's zero-click universe, right? So zero-click is when you go to an LLM or Google and you type a question and you get an answer right there, and you're not clicking. Like, it's zero-click. No clicks are generated outside of the Google or OpenAI ChatGPT universe, and that's a trend that's been increasing. That's what people are.
How do you monetize that? But how do you monetize that?
How does who monetize it?
Google monetize the zero-click world.
I mean, if the zero-click world, if they're staying within Google's ecosystem, like if they're going to YouTube, they can monetize that. They can also I think ads is really the ultimate be-all, end-all. Putting in advertising, they're also still figuring that out. If you go to Google right now and you type I'm looking for a plumber, you'll get an answer to the question, right? And you'll see kind of what they're doing there. But if consumers are getting trained towards more zero-click stuff, right? There's an AI chatbot that they're talking to all the time, and they start talking, and it's plumbing and dentists and whatnot. And real estate's different, but it's conversational. You do tap into that, and I think, to answer your question about the brand, like, you can have a strong brand and all of that, but if the world is slowly moving towards more zero-click universe, I don't know how much your brand adds to the whole thing. Listen, I don't know. Nobody knows, and that's the point. No. Like, everybody's just speculating at this point to see.
So what we do know is if you're a 3, 4, 5, look to merge or sell. If you are if you're Google, you're looking over your shoulder because you got OpenAI on one side and Perplexity, and it doesn't matter where you look, you got a problem. Okay, and you have to evolve rapidly in a world where people no longer want lists of websites as answers to questions. They want the answer to the question. Mm. How do I make my mayonnaise salad, right? Or mayonnaise dressing for my coleslaw salad? Don't send me to 10 home baking websites. Give me the answer, right? And more people just want that answer, which then this fundamentally changes the monetization model. And then if you're the way I summarize it, if you're the small players, you're just thinking, how do I survive? If you're at the top end, you're going, how does my model survive? Right? Because if you think about how the REAs of the world and Zillow's of the world, etc., their model is built on big ads, big expensive ads before the next level. If as the world goes in the way you started, and AI basically goes at the ad level and pulls out that ad from REA, this ad from domain, this ad from real estate X, and this ad from real estate Y, aggregates them and says, there's your results, right? And I don't really care whether it's a real estate agent or a portal or wherever, or an individual person selling the house. Mm. Then how does that affect the model of these agents?
I mean, this is not a direct answer to your question, but in Sweden, right, you have Hemnet, and Hemnet's raised prices a lot, and it's raised them to the point where there's a growing group of agents and brokers that want to list on Hemnet last to save themselves money. And right now, they're saying, oh, you can list on my agency website or this other website, Booli, that's kind of free to list until you do that. What if Google goes into the mix, right? It's no longer this website that you've never heard of before. It's Google. You can list your home for free on Google. That's a big deal, right? That's a really big deal. And I think in the US, one of the big battles right now is around exclusive inventory and Zillow versus Compass. And, Zillow's pulling out the big guns and saying, okay, fine. If you do something against our listing access standards, we're going to ban your listing from Zillow. And now you have Google in the corner being like, okay, that's great. Or you
give it to me.
Yeah, well, I'll take it.
We'll have it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's another, again, it's not this binary switch, but it's another voice at the table, and it's a big voice. It's a loud voice, right? It's Google. There's only a very small number of companies where you would actually care about this. And I think the power here is around who has the inventory. Like, do we need aggregators? I don't know, but the brokers, the agents, the people that actually have the inventory and can kind of control where that goes, they're getting more powerful at the expense of the aggregators.
So will these mega MLSs get more and more power, because they're the sort of the logical aggregators, and they will exist because of the two-sided system. So they're not going to disappear tomorrow. So do they sit on the main power in this game?
I don't want to say yes, because I don't think the MLSs are the be all end all powers. They're in the middle. They're like the piping, and their customers are the agents and brokers in their system. But this was, I think you guys reported on it. This was really interesting. One of the biggest MLSs in the US, CRMLS in California, there was this 24-hour period where they threatened to sue CoStar and cut off their listings. And there's a very small number of organizations out there that successfully threatened to sue CoStar and live to tell the tale, right? And then 24 hours later, they came to an agreement. So that leads me to believe that MLS, that very large MLS, not all MLSs are going to have this, but the California MLS has a degree of power. And they can say, you know what? You have to play ball by our rules. And if you don't, we're going to cut off your listings. So they could do the same thing with Zillow. They could do the same thing with Google. But the outcome there is, again, it wasn't really talked about, but there was a payment. And it's probably not a gigantic payment. It's probably something that Google and these portals could kind of, it's a rounding error of a rounding error in their budgets. But it makes everybody happy at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think the power is sort of two ways. One is the power to say, no, you can't have my listings, or you can. And I think it's the power in that they've actually done the work of aggregating. And more importantly, making, what do you call it, when all the data is in the same sort of, basically looks the same, feels the same, is highly comparable.
Standardized.
Normalizing the data. And I think that's where the power comes, because that's a depending on the segment you operate in, it's either super simple. I mean, how many ways can I compare an AirPod, right? There's not many, right? Versus homes are there's so many there's not an infinite number, but there's a large number of variables to compare. Now, this home here with the guy next door on either side have got fundamentally different houses, yet we're on the same size block of land. So I think there's some interesting value that's been created over many years, and of course history, which is very, very important. And I believe Harvey has a question because he's raised his hand.
Yeah, you didn't have to. You didn't have to point out that I raised my hand on the recording studio. You sort of thrown away the. Anyway, right then. Simon, you were saying before that the markets have also responded to this test. Could you throw a couple of share price changes?
Oh yeah, but I think you
talked to me before we went online just to share the information with our listeners.
Yeah, and Mike raised them in Hemnet. I was just having a look then. In the last 6 months, it's down a third, right? 35% down. REA Group's down about 10, 20% or whatever the number was. I think Rightmove was down a bit more. Zillow seems to be, not apart from the last few days, has not been too badly hit. And maybe that's because of the deal with OpenAI has sort of immune them a little bit. Maybe there's the fact that they've been buying some. I think they bought some AI businesses, so they've been seen as being proactive. Whereas I think people like Rightmove who have been going, look at my wonderful 70+% EBITDA margin, and everyone's going, so where was that investment for the last 10 years? Are you going to play catch up? Are you? Yeah, good luck at that game, right? But I also think there's a bunch of micro issues as well at play. I mean, and each market has different micro issues. And we chatted earlier today with Malcolm Myers from European Internet Ventures, and he was talking about, if you look at Baltic Classifieds Group, there was a change in law around motoring. And that change in law meant that all motoring transactions basically came to a standstill. Well, everyone worked out, because it was all about to rebates, something to do with electric cars. It's motoring, like I care. Okay. But you look at somewhere like Australia, yes, you've got AI and what's that impact, but then you've also got, the major competitor has now got an owner with a lot of money and very motivated to attack the incumbent leader, which hasn't really had someone attacking them hard for a decade. So I think there's that macro and the micro coming together that leads to this downward pressure on basically all of these share prices. And I'd love to get Mike's view on, is this a blip? Everyone getting panicking, selling, then waking up in the morning going, oh, geez, I've got a bit of a hangover, I should buy again. Or do you think this is a long-term change?
I mean, I think it was, I'll talk, we're recording this Tuesday. I'll talk about yesterday, Monday. So, I put my email out kind of Friday night, and people paid attention over the weekend. And then Monday, Zillow stock was down about 12% at most. It ended down 8%. CoStar stock was down 6 or 7. I think Rocket stock for some reason was down 3 or 4%. It really hit all the housing stocks, even Compass and EXP. I mean, that's several $1 billion of market cap that was erased due to this news, right? Investors were concerned that Google was getting into the space. And now it's Tuesday, and as we talked about before, everybody's kind of rebounding because they realize, okay, maybe we overreacted. I don't want to attribute too much inherent intelligence to the market. I mean, the market is the same thing that made tulips super valuable in the Netherlands hundreds of years ago. So, it's not always right, but it is an interesting metric in terms of, what people are interested in. So, and I'm not a stock analyst. I don't know, but I think what we've seen over the past 24 hours in the US, it's probably similar to the macro trend globally with real estate portals, which is people might be overreacting a little bit, but the general theme is right. It's a tricky time to be a real estate portal. There are headwinds, and you can't just keep doing tomorrow what you've done yesterday. So I think the trend is right.
Yeah, I think there's one soft issue that it's hard to put a value on. But if you've been running Rightmove for the last 15 years or been involved in Rightmove for the past 15 years, you haven't really needed to be innovative. You've sort of woken up in the morning, put your prices up, gone back to bed at lunchtime, and then have some time off because you didn't do much.
Right.
Now, in a world of innovation, do you have the right skill sets internally to people who are just starting to do not only taking what you've currently got and doing the normal things, expanding it, but then doing the crazy things. Okay, and how do we do A/B testing on our website? Let's do ABC testing. Let's just do 20 tests all at once, like Google's doing. Okay? I bet most portals they're not technologically set up to do it, and they're not culturally set up to do it. And that to me is the bigger risk. It's almost like the newspapers of the late 1990s who go, no, it's going to be all right. Don't worry. It's a fad. This AI thing, don't worry. And then here we are. And I read, was it in California, one of the newspapers after 97 years printed its final edition this week. I don't remember which one it was, but it was interesting as it was only printing twice a month anyway. But it's eventually these things do change, and I think we're actually seeing cyclic changes at a much faster rate.
I think that's a good point. I agree entirely with that. It's tough to innovate when you haven't had to for a decade.
Yeah, the skills just vaporize, right?
Yep.
You get managers who are coming, there's a hand raised. Again, I'm going to give you shit, Harvey. Sorry.
I was going to say, I was going to say that the plan was for us to talk for about 10, 15 minutes on this, and we've already hit 30. So I was wondering if Mike maybe wanted to give us a couple of parting thoughts, and then we'll wrap this one and get it out there for everyone.
I mean, I have a two-part closing thought. One is there's a lot of speculation right now, and I've talked about this in the past. This is a classic DelPrete probability paradox, where the really exciting, unlikely stuff gets all the attention, and realistic, boring, more likely things get pushed to the side. So it's very entertaining to think Google's going to take over and everybody's at risk and they're going to change the world. That's probably not going to happen. There's a lot of speculation. Let's just kind of wait and see. And part two out of that is kind of what I started with. No matter what business you're in, if a company like Google or Amazon starts showing interest and running a test, it behooves you to pay attention. Don't dismiss it. Don't put your head in the sand. Don't do that. I encourage everybody listening, let's just be curious and see how this tracks over time.
Anything to add, Simon?
I have one thing to add. I remember when I was running REA, and probably about 3 or 4 times I got a phone call from the guys at News Corp summoning me up to Sydney from Melbourne saying, this is happening, what are you going to do about it? And one was a number 3 being bought or something with Channel 9 putting some money into it or whatever. And my answer was consistently nothing. And they're going, why aren't you doing something about it? I'm going, because they haven't done anything. And I actually don't think, I think we're better off staring out the front of the car and driving ourselves rather than having the guy who's 3 cars behind being my sole attention. And I'm sort of looking over in my rear vision mirror or over my shoulder. And I think that's very important for these portals is you want to glance over your shoulder, or with all good driving, you want to be aware what's around you.
Check your blind spots.
But don't allow that to then determine what you're doing. I mean, if you know what you're doing, get on with it, execute well. However, be mindful of the fact that if you haven't built a team internally with the skills and capabilities of realizing there's a curve coming up, you're just going to drive off the cliff, and you'll wonder what the hell happened. Okay. Anyway, that was my very bad analogy, but it'll do.
Better than the analogy that I was sharing with before we went live, Simon, about the train and the surfboards and all kinds of words.
Honestly, anything was better than that, Harvey.
The less said about that, the better. Right, then, ladies and gentlemen, this was a very fun emergency episode of the PPW podcast. Thank you so much for coming to join us at short notice, Mike DelPrete. Pleasure to speak to you as always.
Fantastic, Mike. Thank you.
My pleasure, guys.